What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here again, and I know it's been a little while since my last video. I didn't believe it was a live stream, but I've been working on some few things, and one, I've been busy. Two, I've also been having a few thoughts of ideas for what I can do for the remaining waning days of the summer and soon the upcoming preseason of the Hawks, and eventually predictions and all that stuff. So today I want to do a fun video and look back at the what would have been the 2004-05 NHL season that was canceled by the lockout, where in reality the NHL swept the NHLPA in a 4-game sweep that felt like it was about 100 games long, and basically screwed players among the players screwed players. But it's complicated, the lockout of 2004-05, as all lockouts are, labor dispute, blah blah blah. But now I want to look at today, and I want to think, who would have won the Stanley Cup in 2004-05? And so we got 30 teams up on the board. Vegas and Seattle didn't exist yet. Winnipeg is where Atlanta would be. We're doing this in alphabetical order. So yeah, Winnipeg's where Atlanta, Phoenix is where the Arizona Magnet is. And yeah, let's get right into this. So we need 16 teams first to make the playoffs. So we're going to go through, we're going to check mark next to ones that could make the playoffs, and we'll put an X next to those who won't. Starting with Anaheim, or we can also put a question mark if they're meddling. So let me think. Question mark, probably for Anaheim. Yeah, they had some good pieces there. They go to the conference finals the year before. They went to the conference finals the year after, and then they won the Cup 2 years from then. And then the previous year they didn't make the playoffs, but they had the pieces there. Atlanta, no. Boston. For Boston, personally, let me change markers. Boston's a tough one. Young Bergeron, they don't have Chara yet. They still have Glenn Murray. Who's in net for them? I believe it was Raycroft was the backup at that point. Who was the starter? Name's on the tip of my tongue. But still, their team, they were going in the right direction, but they were still in this more rebuilding phase. But even then, question mark. Buffalo, Ryan Miller was there. Would have had probably his rookie season, I think. He had a lot of good depth pieces. So for Buffalo, put a check mark. Calgary, they went to the final the year prior. Yes. Carolina, no, they didn't have. Although they would win the Cup the next year, 2006, they did not have the pieces until the upcoming free agency, like Ray Whitney, Corey Stillman, Mike Commodore, other guys in there as well. Blackhawks, absolutely not. Colorado, definitely. Columbus, no. Dallas, yeah. So a lot of those are pretty obvious. The Blackhawks were in their dark era. Detroit, again, absolutely. Edmonton went to the final the year previous, but they don't have Pronger. Because they don't have Pronger, I'm going to give it an X. Panthers, no. Kings were miserable. Minnesota, no. Montreal has Jose Theodore, Saku Koivu, and other pieces, so I'm going to put a check. Nashville. Nashville's a tough one. I'll put a question mark. Because they have Volkun in net, who is a very good goaltender. They have a few guys. Shea Weber's coming in. They don't have Peter Forsberg or Paul Kariya like they had on that run, but they probably have Dumont by now. Do they have Dumont? I don't know. They have pieces that are building towards, and they have Barry Trotz as coach as well. New Jersey, yup. Islanders, question mark. Rangers, question mark. Rangers were an older team. Didn't really do them any favors. They would make the playoffs the next year as the 8th seed, but that was when they had a rookie, Henrik Lundqvist, as well. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of the Rangers. I'm going to take the Rangers off the board. So, X. Ottawa, yes, 100%. Philly, yes. Phoenix, no. Pittsburgh, no. San Jose, yes. St. Louis, no. They lost They had traded Pronger at that point. Pronger had been... I think Pronger was injured that year. He would have been injured that year, because I'm trying to remember. Because in 2004, he had a bad injury and he was still recovering in 05, it would have been. and then he was like traded to Edmonton for the year, and then he hated it there. Well, he didn't hate it there. His wife wasn't a fan, and then he went to Anaheim. Tampa won the Cup the year prior. Sure, Toronto has Sundin and company. Yup, they had Belfour. Canucks, ? And Washington, no. So let's see what we got on the board. Do we have 16 teams at least? Firstly, let's take off all the X's. So that's Atlanta, that's Carolina, that's Chicago, that's Columbus, that's Edmonton, that's Florida, that is LA, that is Minnesota, that is the Rangers. I've done research on all these teams. That is Washington, that is St. Louis, that is Pittsburgh, that is Phoenix, and there we go. How many teams are up left there now? We have to look. 1 second. Florida has Luongo. That doesn't mean they have anyone else. That's how I kind of saw it there. So how many from the West? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of the West. At the East, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, did I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Alright. Out of the ones on left on the board, Boston in 04 was first in their division. Islanders were a perennial AC that could be right on the outside of it. I'm going to take the Islanders out. It's the Milbury era. Might as well. Alright, so now I'm going to pause it here and reshape into what the divisions were, and we'll mark who probably would have finished where and what, because we're going to go back to the 6-division, 5-team format. And I'll set that up, and I'll be right back when I do that. Be back in a moment. Alright, so I decided instead of doing it in division form, I do it in conference form. So on the left we have the East right here, and on the right we have, on the left we have the West, on the right we have the East. So, in the grand scheme of things, I think you have your President's Trophy winner, Ottawa Senators. Remember, 2004-05 is the lost season for Ottawa, the season that got away. And I have none in terms of unwavering confidence that Ottawa would have ran away with the season. Well, not ran away, because this isn't going to be a Z. This is going to be a P. Detroit gets the Z. Y, X, 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 X. So, you have the teams that are out of it. Going from worst to best, in the West we have LA, Chicago. LA had one of the most miserable seasons in 05-06. Chicago was awful. Phoenix was yet to be coached by Gretzky. Columbus was Columbus. Minnesota was up and coming. They had Gaborik. They had Koivu. They had Manny Fernandez in net, but they weren't a top-tier team. St. Louis had just lost Pronger, and honestly, now that the emphasis on that makes me want to put Minnesota above there. So Minnesota now gets the 10th spot. Edmonton just misses out. Nashville barely makes it with Barry Trotz behind the bench. Vancouver, they have the Sedins, Naslin. I don't think Bertuzzi is still there, but they still have Morrison. On the blue line, I think at that point they still have Jovanovski and Oland and those guys. In net, they have Cloutier, but he was reliable in the regular season enough. It's in the playoffs that he couldn't beat Detroit. Anaheim has Fedorov, Sikora. Korea, I'm not sure, moved on until later. I don't think Korea moved on until 06, I want to say. And the year after 04, I think, because he was there in 03. But if you have that line together, still you have Korea, Fedorov, and then Solani and Niedermeyer come into next year after the lockout, because the lockout kind of just paused everything. But yeah, so Anaheim gets in as the 6th spot. Colorado is starting to fall off at this point. They don't have Patrick Watt. They have Abisher and net. They still have Sakic, and Forsberg is still there, I think, but he's not at all what he was. They've got Adam Foote's in Columbus, so there's no. But yeah, they're still going to be good. It's Colorado. San Jose, they have Patrick Marleau there. They have Nabokov in net, who's a key piece. Sorry about that. Anyway, so yeah, San Jose, Marleau, Nabokov. They have San Jose was just kind of good. They didn't really have any they had some good players, but they were just kind of good at this point. Nabokov was a big part of that. Marleau isn't what he would become yet, but he would be on his way up. Calgary wins the the Northwest Division at the time, and they were in the final the previous year, so that made the most sense to have them there. I can't see Colorado. They could beat them out. I think it's going to be close, but Calgary, I think, would just beat it out by the end of it. And Dallas wins the Pacific Division. No, not much competition. San Jose, probably the only bit. Anaheim also in there, but not really. And then Detroit wins the West, as they still have Curtis Joseph, Datsuk, Zetterberg, Franzen, Chelios, Lang, Yzerman, Shanahan. Was Brett Hall may have been still there even? There were a lot. So West is there. Going to the East, you have Pittsburgh. They have Malkin and Fleury. They don't have Crosby. Capitals have Ovechkin. That's what keeps them above. And plus, even the first season, Ovechkin had 106 points and they didn't make the playoffs. Crosby had 100-something and they didn't make the playoffs. Florida, they have Luongo and nothing else really. And Mike Keenan is currently the GM then. But they have Bertuzzi, I guess, and they have a bunch of old 80s flames like Joe Nieuwendyk, but no, he's old at that point. Hurricanes are either they miss the playoffs, or they go to the final, and they're not going to the final this year. Atlanta has Heatley and Kovalchuk. That's about it. Rangers are pretty old, and they need to rebuild, and they're starting. And the next year they would. They got Lundqvist in net. They move on from whoever was in between. I think that might have been Kevin Weeks at that point even. I can't recall. Islanders just miss out on the playoffs because they made the playoffs in 02, 03, and 04. They were first-round exits, and they were swept by Tampa in 04. So that's why they are where they are in ninth in the conference, just barely missing out. Boston barely makes it in. They have Joe Thornton. They have Bergeron. They have other pieces in. They don't have Chara yet, but he's coming soon. But yeah, Bergeron and Thornton being that 1-2 punch in the center role. In net, you have... I forgot who the goalie was. He was a good goalie, but I remember he was a name that I had in my mind. I can't remember, but I remember he was a decent enough goalie to get them into the playoffs. Flyers, they were the 8th seed in the next year after this, and then they were the 8th seed in 06, I think. Yeah, they were the 8th seed in 06, and they missed the playoffs in 07. They were the worst team in the league in 07, and then they make the playoffs and go to the conference final in 08. It was so weird how the Flyers did that when I look back on history. But by this point, Lindros is gone, way gone. They just have a bunch of players that somehow, and Roenick was probably their best player at this point, and that's really not good enough because Roenick is past his prime. Bug up my board. There we go. Buffalo, Briere, Ryan Miller, Brian Campbell, all these decent, Joachim Petcht, Jason Pominville, a lot of decent players that would be in Buffalo. That Maxim Afinogenov, I think that's how you pronounce it, Afinogenov, maybe not. But so Buffalo, they're in. Montreal, Saku Koivu, Jose Theodore, they're in just because they made the playoffs mostly every year at that point until 2007. I don't think they made it in 2007, but yeah, they still have Theodore. They're fine. Toronto has Matt Sundin, Ed Belfour. Then one more run for Belfour. So yeah, Belfour gets one more run in out of Toronto, possibly. Maybe go to the second round. We'll see. And so yeah, Toronto in the top 4, but not really in competition for a title spot. Yeah, as you can see, there's an entire division in the East Conference. You have the entire Northeast Division. And you realize that 4 of the Southeast teams are right here. Southeast was not a good division at all. Not really. I think maybe even once or twice that more than 2 teams made it into the playoffs. If I can remember. Probably 2011, Washington, Tampa, even 2012, Florida and Washington. It wasn't until they didn't. There wasn't a lot of times where there were more than 2 teams, even more than 1 team in the Southeast Division. But so Tampa, they won the Cup the previous year. They've run away with the Southeast Division. It's not close. New Jersey, still a good team. Niedermeyer and Stevens on the blue line. This would be Stevens' final year, and Niedermeyer would go on to have success with the Ducks after this. Brodeur is still in net, and they have Eliash. They have John Madden's a key contributor at this point. And, so New Jersey, they're set. They've got a ton of players, and they're good. Ottawa, what is it there to say? Hasek, Redden, Chara, Alfredson, Hossa, Spezza, Fisher, Vermette, Havlat, so many players. There are so many players on this roster, and I was having Peter Schaefer even. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to rehearse. Mazzaros, I think, was here at this point. But yeah, Ottawa this year, absolutely incredible. Ottawa had the best team in the league, I think, in 05. That's why it's called the lost year for Ottawa. But now I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to put these in the playoff matchups, and we'll see how this would shape out in reality in the one we've created here. Be back in a moment. Alright, welcome back, guys. And now we have our playoff seeding set up. So we have 1v8, 2v7, 3v6, 4v5. And let's go through this. So, Detroit and Nashville. These teams played each other in 2008. Detroit won in 6. Should have been less, but Hasek wasn't on top of his goaltending that year. But Detroit easily, I think, would beat Nashville in about 5 or 6 games as well. So Detroit moves on. And especially with Curtis Joseph versus Volkun, I'd take probably Joseph as well. And this is before they opened up the game. So let's say they introduced the new rules for opening up the game and no trap style hockey later on. Let's say they do it during the next summer. So all those pre-salary cap stuff applies. Now Dallas and Vancouver. Vancouver had beaten Dallas in a playoff series in the cap era, and Vancouver actually never lost to Dallas in a playoff series. But Dallas, they still say that Dallas has a lot. Turco and Ned against Cloutier. It's going to be a hard series for Vancouver to win. And while Modano's not at where he was, but the more I think about it, the more I'm leaning towards Vancouver, to be honest. You know what? Yeah. The more I think about it, I think Vancouver probably wins this series. It's a bad matchup for Dallas. And I think Vancouver is more skilled than Dallas would. Dallas was a bit of a grindy team at this point, a pretty defensive team, while Vancouver was the one who was more offensive. Naslund was a great two-way forward, but I think the Sedins, Naslund, Morrison, they got weapons on the blue line as well. I think they just overpower it, and Hatcher's also gone from Dallas, so Hatcher's in Detroit at this point, so they don't really have that big tough guy on the blue line as well. So Turco just not being able to win in the playoffs, that just goes even farther. Calgary and San Jose. I feel like it's going to have to be Calgary. Jerome McGinley, Craig Conroy, Mika Kiprasov in net against Nabokov. Kiprasov's being motivated by this was the team that traded him away for basically nothing. And because they had Nabokov, they had Toskala. Toskala obviously moved on to Detroit, or not Detroit, Toronto. But Kiprasov was traded to San Jose early on, and he became a pretty good goaltender for Calgary as his legend kind of just grew. They went to the final the previous year. I'll take Calgary in that series. In Colorado and Anaheim. So, Giguère versus Abisher, I would take Giguère. The blue line, Anaheim has Ozelich. Sorry about that, my mom had to tell me something. So yeah, Abisher versus Giguère, I take Giguère. Ozelich versus... who would be their top defenseman at this point? Because Foot's in Columbus at this point, I believe. who would be their number one defenseman? I don't think it's anyone notable if I can't remember it. Because this team is a forward group. They have Hayduk, they have Sakic. I feel like Anaheim. I think I got to take Anaheim, because Anaheim also sweeps them in the second round of the 2006 playoffs. So, and they were also the lower seed there. So I feel like I have to take Anaheim here. So yeah, Anaheim beats Colorado as two upsets in the first round. And then Ottawa and Boston. Ottawa in probably 4. I'll say 5 just because of Joe Thornton, and he can probably steal a game or two. Their goaltender, whoever it is. I'm gonna look it up right now. It's really bugging me. I remember it was a decent goaltender enough. 2004-05 Boston. That's not right. That's not right, because I need to do 03-04 because I need to say 03-04 because there was no rosters technically. So their goaltender for the season was Bergeron was on this team. Hall Gill, Sergei Gonchar, Mike Knuble, Martin Lapointe, Glenn Murray, Michael Nylander, Sean O'Donnell, Felix Potvin. Felix the Cat Potvin was in net with Ray Croft as the backup. They also have Brian Rolston, Sergei Samsonov, Smart Samuelson. This is actually a closer series than I think. I forgot how many players were on this team. Boston makes it close in the end, but Hasek versus Potvin, I'm gonna take Hasek all day. Even though Hasek's older, Hasek won a Stanley Cup in his final year when he was 43. I'm taking Hasek. I'm gonna say Ottawa wins the series in probably 5 or 6 games. 7 if Boston pushes them to the limit and their depth really kicks in. Now New Jersey and Philly. This would be a bruising series, and I think New Jersey comes out of it probably in 7. You have Niedermeyer and Stevens. You have Brodeur. Philly. I'm pretty sure Esch was in net for Philly at this point. Robert Esch. That's a name, and but yeah, I think Brodeur versus Esch, definitely Brodeur. Stevens and Niedermeyer is an upset there. And up front, Elias versus Roenick. I'm taking Elias, especially when Elias is arguably in his prime and Roenick is on the decline. Tampa and Buffalo. Buffalo has a young Ryan Miller who's not going to become what he's going to become yet. Briere's really good at this point. You have, as I mentioned, Pominville, Hetched. Drew Stafford wasn't a part of it. Yeah, he was the pick that fate chose that year in the first round. Tampa, they're coming off a cup final appearance. I have to take Tampa. So the top 3 seeds all contribute. Now, excuse me, I got hiccups. I kind of ate in between when I was doing this, so bit of a regurgitation. So Toronto and Montreal. So we saw this series in 2021. Very different scenario. But this would be the first time since, at this point, 1979, that we would have seen these teams play each other. And 2021 was the most recent because 1979, it was that whole big thing. Montreal wins that 1-7. Well, Montreal, Theodore versus Belfour. Theodore is in his prime. Belfour is at the end of his career, looking for one more run. Sundin versus Koivu. Sundin's closer to the end of his career. Koivu's around the middle. It's close. It's very close. It's going to be a 7-game series. I'm going to have to. On defense, it's probably who they have. Montreal has Surrey. Do they have Radek Bonk at this point? Even I think they have Radek Bonk. Then who does Toronto have on? They have Brian Leetch. Brian Leetch is on this team, and Brian McCabe. McCabe is not a top 2D. To be fair, Surrey and isn't really either. Unless he did have a heck of a slap shot though. Toronto was an older team, so they probably get more tired. Montreal was a depth-heavy team. They didn't have a lot of superstars. They had a lot of decent players though. Toronto was more Sundin and everyone around him. And for those reasons, I'm going to take Montreal. Belfour tries to get one more run, but Toronto misses the playoffs the next 2 years, and he never does. And I'm pretty sure he finished his career out in Florida, isn't it? Because I have his card from 2006-07, and it's He's with Florida, so he finishes his career out in Florida. But yeah, so we have 3 upsets in the first round, but now we have 2 lower seeds, so that'd be first 1 and 7. So Detroit and Vancouver, and you know what they say, Kluche can't beat Detroit, so Detroit moves on to the conference final basically for free. It could be in a sweep, it'd probably be in a sweep. Detroit was really good at this point. I don't know how Detroit didn't win a cup from in between 03 and 08. I mean 02 and 08, because they won the President's Trophy in 4 and 6, first in the West in 07, second in the West in 03, where they were swept by Anaheim. But yeah. So Calgary and Anaheim then. Calgary again, but Anaheim though, the Anaheim roster, one of the ideas I had to do a series on was looking back at teams that were really incredible or had the potential to be just amazing and just for whatever reason came up short. And I had a series where one of the teams I was going to do was going to be the 2005-06 Ducks, which they go to the conference final that year. Probably think, why do you mean? I'll explain it when I do the video. Another one I was going to do was probably the 04-05 Senators, and leave your comments down below for any suggestions you might have as well for that. So yeah. So Calgary, Kiprusoff versus Jaguar. Those are 2 really good goalies. Kiprusoff arguably could have won the Conn Smythe in 2004 and ended up going to Brad Richards. Jaguar did win a Conn Smythe in 03. Anaheim's looking to get back. They were the 2 last teams in the final in the Western Conference. It's a hard series. I might come back to this one. Ottawa and New Jersey, though. Ottawa and New Jersey. Oh, wait, no. That doesn't happen because Ottawa would play Montreal because they're the lowest. And that way Tampa would come down here and New Jersey would play Tampa. New Jersey had knocked out Tampa a few years previous. Brodeur versus, at this point, it's still Javi Bulin. I have a hard time not taking Jersey. Tampa didn't have to go through Jersey in 04. They went through Philly in 7. They went through Calgary in 7. They went through Islanders in 4 or 5. And then they went through, would they be in the second round? They went through Montreal. So I'm going to have to take Jersey. Jersey probably gets to the conference final again because that's what they do. And they're really good at this point. And this is also a last hurrah for Stevens. Ottawa and Montreal. So Montreal now goes through their second Canadian team in the Ottawa Senators, and they don't get past them. I think Hasek can kind of curb stomp on Theodore. Theodore's one of the few Hart Trophy winners to not make it into the Hall of Fame, and I think it's a shame because he had like 3 really good years and then kind of just tailed off. But yeah, so our conference final is going to consist of Ottawa and New Jersey right here. But so yeah, and then back to Anaheim and Calgary. Fedorov, Sikora, Korea, and then you have Iginla, Conroy, and Calgary just doesn't have the depth. Because this would also have been. I'm going to say Calgary simply for the reason that they were in the final the previous year. I mean, Anaheim got Fedorov, and Fedorov was an interesting case in Anaheim. We'll go into that for the 05-06 Ducks video. But Anaheim, they don't have Getzlaf, Perry, Penner, and Kunitz, what would form their rookie depth for when they would win the Cup in 07, when they ran in 06. I mean, they could have started those years. They definitely could have gotten some games in, but they weren't. A year in the American League in 04-05 for all those guys, the Kunitz, Penner, Perry, and Getzlaf, really elevated them, and they went right to the team. They basically just skipped the American Hockey League stage from their youth, and it allowed them to excel and win that cup really early on in their careers. Anaheim also has McDonald. They have Ozelich, but and they're not what they'll become yet. But in Calgary, they just Kiprusoff. Still going hard from the previous year. Jaguar, Anaheim didn't even make the playoffs in 04. They kind of just fell off hard, so I'm going to take the Flames. So, Calgary and Detroit. Teams meet each other a few times. Calgary beat them in 04 when they were the President's Trophy winners on their way to the final. And I think Detroit would remember that. And I think Detroit I don't really know how they lost that series to Calgary. Calgary must have just been on a mission, but that's why I think Detroit is going to go to the final. Detroit goes to their final. And New Jersey, it's Brodeur versus Hasek, arguably two of the greatest goaltenders, not arguably, two of the greatest goaltenders who have ever played the game. The two best in modern history, the two last to play in modern history. And of course, now you can add Fleury to that list of modern. You can add Fleury, you can add Vasilevsky. He's definitely going to be on there. Jonathan Quick is a probably a Hall of Famer. Two goalies, two cups. Conn Smythe. I don't know if he ever won a Vezina. I can't recall. But yeah. So Hasek and Brodeur. The trap is starting to fall out. Stevens is getting older. The Devils are getting older as a team. Ottawa's a younger team. I'm going to take Ottawa in the final, even though New Jersey has the experience. I think a long run, they've had a lot of them, and I think they'll eventually just kind of die out. So in the final, we have Detroit and Ottawa. And as I said, 04-05 is the last year for Ottawa. Hasek versus Joseph. It's close, but I'm going to take Hasek. And Alfredsson, Hossa, and Spezza versus Datsuk, Zetterberg, and whether it's Shanahan, Yzerman. And you also have Reddit and Chara against Lidstrom, Chelios, so an older D pair. And also Darian Hatcher's there, older, but he's there. Matthew Schneider. I think it's going to be about a 6 or 7 game series, but I think the Ottawa Senators win the Stanley Cup that year, just because there has to be some upsets in every playoff run. And but from what I can see, this could have been a year that the President's Trophy winner probably would have won the cup. Detroit was a fantastic team. Don't get me wrong. Detroit goes to the final. However, it's known as the lost year for Ottawa, so it's very hard for me to not put Ottawa as the champion. I mean, there's been upsets here. We had Montreal beat Toronto. We had Calgary. Actually, Calgary was done. Anaheim beat the Avs. Vancouver beat Dallas. So it's not like we didn't have any upsets. Just that's just the way it worked out. There's really nothing else I can say that. So anyway, I think that's going to be it. So I think Ottawa is going to be your champion, and I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Tell me down below, do you agree that Ottawa would have won the Cup in 04-05? Tell me your way it would have gone. Tell me your what-if scenario, basically. And what if there had been a season? This isn't going to go in the what-if, but this is just going to be who would have won the Cup in 2004-05. Thank you guys for watching. I know it's actually been a pretty long video just doing this dissection. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see. Well, you heard earlier what teams that I can look into that were just special in a way that there was a lot of something there, and it just either didn't work out or pieces were traded way too early, or it could have been really amazing if all of it was together, but it just wasn't. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.